Welcome to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI, your home for the politically homeless, streaming live at KVI.com and on the KVI app. If you want to be part of the most dangerous show on the airwaves, call or text the Warrior Injury Law Studio line at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. Coming up this hour, apparently it's super easy to hack crosswalks. And do voters regret pulling the lever for Trump? Even CNN is shocked by the results. But before we get to any of that, time for your daily dose of adrenaline.
You want me to stick this into my heart? Are you f***ing nuts?
People make assumptions all the time. Well, you know the phrase they say about assumptions, and I'm not going to say it on the radio because you probably have kids in the car. But they made a lot of assumptions about what's going on with the shooter at Florida State University. What we know now is the following. 2 people were killed, 6 others were injured. The shooter is in custody. We know that the shooting began around 11:50 a.m. We do not name shooters on this show because we don't want to give them the notoriety that oftentimes they crave. We know that the shooter was the child of a sheriff's office deputy. That is all we know. We don't know intentions. And I know that anybody who's listening to the show right now and is on social media and votes a certain way is assuming it's one thing, and everybody else is assuming it's something else. And we don't know. I read the source that a lot of people are quoting online. Nothing's clear from that at all. In fact, I would actually say it says the opposite of what a lot of you think it does. We're not going to speculate. I will say, though, is that a sane person does not shoot up a school, regardless of what their political ideology is. We know what's going to happen is that if this shooter was somehow affiliated with the right, the mainstream media will talk about this until the end of time. If the shooter was somehow affiliated with the left, immediately it will be gone with the headlines. That doesn't change the fact of there are 2 dead people and 6 injured people. That doesn't change the fact of how wide open our college campuses are. When I went to visit my son in Israel on his college campus, you can't get through the gate unless you have a student ID. And if you're a guest, they have a guard there that has to verify that you're a guest before you get in on that kid's student ID, even if it's your own kid. Over at UW, at University of Washington, when I have speaking gigs there, when I'm there for any other reason, when I just feel like walking the grounds, I don't really ever feel like walking the grounds of UW. At University of Washington, you can not only get into any part of the campus, you can also get into any building on campus. Without any security, without anything else, you can just walk in. I've done it many times. My school in New York, where I went to college, you can walk around the campus all you want. The buildings, you need ID from some lazy security guard who's sitting there just going all day long, ID, 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 ID. That's their job. If we value our kids, and I say this every time there's a shooting, if we value our kids, we will make these schools hard targets. We will make them impenetrable. That is what we will do. Speculating on anything else right now about motives, anything else, is a waste of time. Somebody will have egg on their face tomorrow for all the speculation that's going on. And sometimes we never know. Sometimes crazy people just do crazy things. I would rather say, how come we don't make these places hard targets rather than soft targets? Gun-free zone signs do not work. Now, people make a lot of assumptions about this. They've made a ton of assumptions about this. So, for example, today, they were making an assumption about what Donald Trump said. People on the left were saying, oh, he just said these kind of things happen. Oh, it's just a fact of life. Because they yanked his words out of context. That's not what he said at all. Here are his full remarks when he was commenting on the shooting in the Oval Office today when he was meeting with the leader of Italy.
Thank you very much, everybody. And I've been briefed on the Florida State University, Tallahassee, active shooting. I guess it's an active shooter. fully briefed as to where we are right now. It's a shame. It's a horrible thing. Horrible that things like this take place. And we'll have more to say about it later.
It's a horrible thing. It's horrible that things like this take place. But the left grabbed that and said things like this take place because they want to take him out of context. He could not have been clearer. That's the kind of nonsense they do. Take things out of context or apply a context that doesn't exist. So, there's the story we've been sitting on for a few days now. And this is the one about Carmelo Anthony and Austin Metcalf. So what happens? We have this story where Austin Metcalf was a football player. His team was playing football. And there was some kind of awning tent set up for the team to come into the shade. Carmelo Anthony was sitting there. And he was sitting where he wasn't supposed to be. And Austin Metcalf said, "Can you move? It's not where you belong." And Carmelo Anthony said, "Make me." And when he said, "You don't want me to make you," Carmelo Anthony pulled a knife out of his backpack and stabbed Austin Metcalf to death. This isn't alleged. Why? Because when the police found Carmelo Anthony nearby, he admitted to it. Yes, I know he hasn't been convicted yet or anything else, but he admitted to it, and there are many, many witnesses to what happened. So over a beef regarding who gets the shady spot on a football field, we now have a dead kid. Well, normally this wouldn't be much of a story. It's sad, but the left is prescribing assigning all kind of motive to something that isn't there. Why? Because Carmelo Anthony is black and Austin Metcalf is white. So they're doing everything they can to make Carmelo Anthony seem like the victim rather than the person who actually committed this horrible crime. And now, something even more insane happened in the story, which has had so many ridiculous things happen along the way. Representative for Carmelo Anthony in his murder case and the killing of 17-year-old Austin Metcalf called the police on Metcalf's father for showing up to a press conference they were holding. According to ABC 8, the Next Generation Action Network, which is a Dallas-based activist group that has taken on the role of publicly defending Anthony, called the police and asked for Jeff Metcalf to be removed from the scene. What's next, guys? If he shows up to the trial, you're going to ask for him to be removed too? The trial over his dead son? Anthony has been released from jail, placed under house arrest after being charged with the murder of Austin Metcalf. Anthony admitted to stabbing Metcalf at a track meet, according to police. He has claimed self-defense in the case and has garnered national media attention. Now, Dominic Alexander, who is the representative for Carmelo Anthony's family, said this about having the dad of the victim arrested.
And all I'm going to say, so it don't be asked later, is that was disrespectful and just shows you all the character who is not invited. He knows that it's inappropriate to be near this family, but he did it. And so I say to people, actions speak louder than words. Okay? What he has failed into is the political operatives that want to make this thing a political thing of hate, yet bigotry, and yet racism. We have conservative operatives that have been posting nonstop about this case.
Okay, so you think it's disrespectful for the dad of the kid who was murdered to show up a press conference saying this kind of stuff that you're saying, trying to make it a political thing, trying to make it a racial thing, which it wasn't. What if I told you that Carmelo Anthony is on house arrest right now in a gated community because his family seems to be well-to-do? What if I told you that these online fundraisers for his family that are skyrocketing, which is insane, by the way, that money may have been used to buy a new car rather than legal defense or anything else? What if I told you Carmelo Anthony's family is well off because they can afford to live in that gated community? It's insane, the assumptions that everybody is making just because he's black or just because Austin Metcalf is white. People want to assign something to a case which isn't there. This wasn't a racial thing. This is two kids got into an argument and one pulled out a knife. Now, Carmelo Anthony is probably going to claim self-defense. I don't think that's going to work because if it's self-defense, you pull out a knife in a fist fight. Yeah, I don't think that's going to work at all. So they're trying to play the race card. Mainstream media, no better. You notice a certain story that disappeared from the headlines? So the lunatic who carried out the firebombing attack on Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro's home, yeah, we found out that this guy just didn't like Jews. This guy subscribed to the pro-Hamas narrative. That's what this guy did. So he firebombed, this guy Cody Balmer, firebombed the governor of Pennsylvania's mansion on the second night of a Jewish holiday. Does the governor of Pennsylvania get to make decisions for what happens of U.S. foreign policy in the Middle East? Does the governor of Pennsylvania get to make decisions about what the Netanyahu government does? And by the way, Josh Shapiro may be a supporter of Israel, may be a supporter of Jews, but him and I differ extremely on what that actually means. He's more in line with the Biden approach to these things than, say, the Trump approach to these things. But you notice that story is just gone. Why? Because it wasn't a right-wing activist who firebombed Shapiro's house. Instead, it was a left-wing lunatic who's got communist and socialist tendencies who aligns with the Palestinian and Hamas cause. So poof, gone like it never even existed. If this had been some right-winger, we would have never heard the end of it. They would be going on till the end of time. Imagine if it's a black governor and a white person firebombs the house. Oh, we would never hear the end of it. Never, ever hear the end of it. But now the story is just gone. Poof! From the media. Disappeared because it doesn't fit a narrative they want. For example, this illegal immigrant, this Maryland man who's actually from El Salvador, who's an MS-13 gang member. A new report from the Tennessee Star says that Kilmar Armando Abreu Garcia is not only a confirmed member of the violent MS-13 street gang, but in addition to that, when he was suspected of human trafficking, they got the details on what he was actually doing. He was suspected of human trafficking, and the FBI, under Joe Biden, had him released. According to the Tennessee Star, Garcia was stopped on December 6, 2022. The officer immediately discovered that Abreu Garcia was transporting 7 passengers from Texas to Maryland. Gee, why do you think he was doing that? During a nearly 2-hour traffic stop, the officer determined that Garcia was operating the vehicle without a driver's license, and after searching for information about him, discovered he was on a terrorist watch list, but couldn't locate him on a deportation list. However, another source told the outlet that one of his passengers was on the terrorist watch list, not him. To settle the confusion, the Highway Patrol contacted the FBI, which at the time was led by former Director Christopher Wray under the Biden administration. The FBI instructed the officers at the scene to take pictures of all 8 people, document the contents of the vehicle, and once the FBI received the pictures, the agency reportedly requested that the Highway Patrol release all 8 individuals, and the officers complied with the request. So you literally had people being human trafficked into this country, and Joe Biden's FBI said, let them all go. Let them all go. No problem. That's what Abreu Garcia was doing for MS-13, human trafficking. On Wednesday, it was revealed that Abreu Garcia was arrested on March 28, 2019, during a meeting with several high-level MS-13 gang members in Hyattsville, Maryland, despite repeated claims by Democrats that he had no gang affiliation. We also found out yesterday that Garcia's wife had petitioned for a domestic violence protective order against him in 2021 because he beat her so bad she had black eyes and he beat her with his shoe. But this is who the Democrats are defending? This is the narrative they want to run with? Because they're trying to force a round peg into a square hole with, oh, well, what Trump's doing is bad, so we have to find a way of calling him out for it. That's what it is. That's what they want to do. So this is the guy they've picked. So this illegal immigrant, gang member, domestic abuser is the new hero of the Democrat Party? That's absolutely insane. Absolutely insane. And the media doesn't want to discuss how the left has embraced the murderer of a CEO of a healthcare company, that it was left-leaning psychos who tried to kill a presidential candidate twice against the guy who's now the president, a governor who was nearly killed with his family, burned alive almost, businesses burned to the ground, all by left-wingers. But, you know, CNN and the rest of the left-leaning media can't find any examples of left-wing extremism. Can't find it at all. So now, what do they have to do? Manufacture things to prove their narrative. You know what happens when you make assumptions? You know what that means. You know what the rest of that statement is. This is absolutely crazy. Absolutely crazy that this is where we are. And people wonder why we don't trust the media. Whatever we find out about the shooter in Florida State, if we find out he's more affiliated with the right, the media will cover it nonstop until the end of time. If we find out he's more affiliated with the left, that's going to be the last you ever heard about the shooting, like the other shootings last year that were committed by trans people. That is just where we're at as a country, which is beyond insane. If it doesn't fit the narrative, even with us getting rid of DEI, even with President Trump doing what he's doing, it just disappears for the headlines. And this is why people aren't watching the media anymore. This is why people are getting their news from people like me, as opposed to the mainstream media, because you can't trust the mainstream media at all anymore. If it doesn't fit their narrative, poof, goodbye. We're just going to get rid of the whole thing. Tell me, what are your assumptions about what we're going to find out about this guy? Give us a call or a text at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. Speaking of CEOs who were assassinated by left-wing psychos, somebody reprogrammed the crosswalks here in Seattle to threaten billionaires to get Luigi'd. We'll have that insane audio for you when we come back. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. Several Seattle crosswalk push buttons, you know, those things that are supposed to go beep, beep, beep when they tell people who are blind to cross the street, were hacked to play AI-generated audio messages mimicking tech billionaires, prompting a swift response from the Seattle Department of Transportation. One altered message, which has circulated on social media, features a voice impersonating Amazon founder Jeff Bezos. And here's what it sounds like. Give a listen.
Hi, I'm Jeff Bezos. This crosswalk is sponsored by Amazon Prime with an important message. You know, please don't tax the rich. Otherwise, all the other billionaires will move to Florida, too. Wouldn't it be terrible if all the rich people left Seattle or got Luigi'd and then normal people could afford to live here again? Jeffrey Bezos.
Okay. I think it's a safe bet, but it might be an assumption. And our friend Matt over on the text line says assumptions make an assumption out of you and umption. Yes, thank you, Matt. But it might be an assumption, but that doesn't sound like somebody who's politically aligned with us. We know the message refers to Luigi Mangione, who is currently facing murder charges for the murder of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. Mangione has been hailed as a hero by far-left progressives. This incident also comes as Democrats in the Washington legislature have been advocating for the largest tax increases in state history that include a wealth tax and a tax on payroll. Earlier this month, dozens of major companies sent a letter warning Washington state's governor, Bob Ferguson, and Democratic-controlled Senate legislature that their tax and budget proposals threaten the evergreen state's economic stability. Alaska Airlines, Amazon, Costco, Puget Sound Energy, Microsoft, Nordstrom, T-Mobile, Redfin, Virginia Mason, Zillow, even the Seattle Mariners were among the dozens of co-signers on the letter sent to Governor Bob Ferguson, State House, and Senate leadership. AI-generated voices of billionaires, including those of Bezos, Elon Musk, and Mark Zuckerberg, were reportedly heard issuing similar messages in Northern California crosswalks over the weekend. Now, Seattle Department of Transportation confirmed on Wednesday that it had dispatched crews to investigate and fix the tampered crosswalk push buttons. They say the audio recordings at crosswalks play a critical role for people who are blind or have limited vision, helping them cross the street safely. We are concerned that someone would disregard the safety of people to make a political statement. We take this matter seriously and are working as fast as we can to respond to the situation. So, a few things are troubling with me. One, somebody messed with the crosswalks. Two, our crosswalks are that easily hackable? Are the traffic lights also that easily hackable? I thought you needed the Napster, like in The Italian Job, played by Seth Green, to hack traffic lights. So that way you could take down the guy who's got your gold in the back of the armored truck that he stole from you, that you stole from somebody in Venice. I thought that we had to go to huge efforts to hack our traffic system, but apparently not. Now, a source revealed to us that it's a fairly easy password to access the system, and it's now being changed, but each intersection has to be done one at a time. And added that the app to access the system can be downloaded on Google Play, which is beyond crazy, by the way, that you could just access that stuff so easily. That's nuts. Now, getting back to the message it was saying, where they want to kill billionaires or kill millionaires or kill CEOs, they want them to get Luigi Mangione. Last night, Taylor Lorenz, the lunatic former reporter for the Washington Post, who was freaking out about libs of TikTok and decided to dox her entire family, who now I think works for Mehdi Hassan, you know, the terrorist supporter. She was on Sean Hannity's show last night, and Sean Hannity was asking her about her previous comments, saying that Luigi Mangione was good looking. Oh, he's so sexy. We love this alleged assassin. And you want to see how unhinged the left is? Give a listen to this exchange between Sean Hannity and the former Washington Post reporter, Taylor Lorenz.
Okay, simple question. Do you condemn that? Can you take a moral stand and condemn that?
What I condemn is the violence of our system, and I would love for you to acknowledge that.
I'm not asking you to condemn the system. Taylor, do you condemn people that call for assassination?
Gosh, you're going to ask if I condemn Hamas next, this is crazy. I would love for you to acknowledge what I'm actually saying, Sean, and we seem to be talking past each other. I want to talk about the fact that half of all adults are delayed because of cost. We need to talk about that 70% of Americans, by the way, believe that the insurance company practices are responsible in part for Thompson's death. These are signs of an unhealthy...
You want to put a rationalization. I am saying anybody that wants to assassinate any innocent person is wrong. I don't care if it's a Democrat or Republican or a father or a husband, and I speak that is a simple truth that anyone with a heart would easily say on national TV.
She's arguing with Sean Hannity because he is saying, why can't you condemn an assassin? It shouldn't be that hard to condemn an assassin. And yet she's called him sexy and cute and handsome and all the other words she came up with for him. We go to the Warrior Injury Law studio line, take a call from Jim in Seattle. Jim, what's up, man?
Hey, Ari, how are you today?
I'm just peachy.
Woe to those who call good evil and evil good. I want to talk to the people out there about human trafficking. My little girl was caught up and pulled up into that, and these people are brutal. They don't care about you. They treated her like she was a piece of flesh and used her and abused her to the point where they would burn cigarettes at her to get her to comply, to break her will down. And here's the thing about it is, if she tried to run, they would turn around and go after the parents, and they would come after us, and they would want to kill us. That's how they keep these guys in order. I don't know if the people out there, that the bleeding liberals out there, understand the fact that they had babies that with the MS-13 when the people were trying to cross, and they have mules. They found a 6-month-old baby. In the stomach was human fluids, but the baby was nailed to the tree. They took the brother and sister and use them for human trafficking.
Oh, the stories we've gotten from the border are just horrible. The videos we've seen from the border are horrible. But you go there now, and it's amazing that all we needed was a new president as opposed to more funding. And I mean, Jim, I'm really sorry for what you and your family went through. But I've told this story a couple times on air before, that I was driving in Seattle. I was in the Georgetown neighborhood where my office used to be. And I see this woman who clearly used to be very pretty, but she's got these rags for clothing that are falling off her. She's walking around like she's in a drug-induced haze. She's walking down the street. Looks like she escaped from human trafficking or wandered away or was released. And I called the police. Unfortunately, I didn't follow her the whole way to see how that story ended. But how many times do we see this kind of insanity happening here in Seattle? And the fact that the left is sticking up for a guy who is involved in human trafficking is beyond crazy. Jim, I appreciate you sharing with us so openly. I appreciate you being part of the show and giving us a call today. You want to be part of the show, you give us a call or a text at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. When we come back, do voters regret pulling the lever for Trump, as the Democrats like to say? CNN has a new poll out, and its answers are going to be shocking to you. We'll give you the details when we come back. You're listening to The Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. I sometimes forget that we elected a stand-up comedian as president of the United States. He just doesn't identify as a stand-up comedian, but Donald Trump says some very funny things. Today, when the press was in the Oval Office while he was meeting with the leader of Italy, Donald Trump had this zinger, which I chuckled at.
They were useless. They were incompetent. Worst administration in the history of our country. Worse than Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter died a happy man. You know why? Because he wasn't the worst president. Joe Biden was. So I think you're going to see some fantastic numbers when this all happens. It's happening now. I mean, everybody wants to make a deal.
So the numbers he's talking about are on the trade deals. Okay, well, we hear a lot of countries are in the middle of negotiating trade deals. We don't have the finalized ones yet. We hear over 100 countries want to negotiate trade deals with the U.S. or renegotiate their trade deals. But the common refrain you're hearing out of the left is, this isn't what they voted for when they picked Trump. This isn't what they voted for. Yeah, it is. We voted for all of this. We voted for all the things. In fact, CNN went and splashed some cold water on those claims by saying, yeah, that's exactly how people feel. This is what they voted for, and they're happy about it.
Let's talk about Trump voters and how they feel. Do they regret their vote?
I mean, this is the big question, right? I hear all these stories, all these articles. All the Trump voters, they regret what they did back in 2024. I'm here to tell you, very few of them regret what they did back in 2024. What are we talking about? Trump voters looking back at 2024. We got a new poll out. The poll was conducted this month. What percentage would change their vote to a different candidate? We're talking just 2%, just 2%. That's not even a wide spot on the road. And then there's this additional 1% who say they would rather not vote. We're talking overall under 5% might or would have changed their vote, Donald Trump voters back in 2024. And then you ask, okay, the same question to Kamala Harris voters, and it turns out the numbers are rather similar. So if there was a repeat, if folks got to be able to redo their vote that they had back in 2024, would the result be any different? I doubt it would be. I doubt it would be, or it would still be extremely close.
Extremely close. It would be the exact same thing because people say, yes, this is what I voted for. You look at these mainstream media outlets, and we'll talk about this later in the show. But for example, this report comes out about Donald Trump telling Israel not to bomb Iran, right? And a lot of people said, oh my God, Ari, what do you think of this? What do you think of this? And I go, and? Do you know why the media is trying to make a big deal out of this? They're trying to shake people like me. Do I want Iran turned to glass? Absolutely. That's why I shouldn't be making the decisions. That's why we don't let people go about avenging their loved ones who were murdered by somebody. We let the legal system take care of that. Because if I had my way, Iran would be turned to glass. There are plenty of innocent people who live in Iran who don't like the regime. So you know what? It's probably a good thing that I don't get to make the decision about what we do with Iran. Should we talk to somebody before blowing them off the face of the earth? Yeah. So Donald Trump is saying to Israel, hang on, hold on, before you bomb them back to the 8th century where those barbarians belong, maybe we should actually try and do something where we don't flatten Iran and kill a whole bunch of people that are actually innocent civilians. And maybe we should talk to them first and see what we can do because we're pressuring them economically. They're losing on every single front of their proxy wars. Maybe they're in trouble. Look, Hamas right now has no money to pay anybody anymore. They have no aid. They've been cut off from everything, and they're still determined to kill Jews. Do you know their big thing? They rejected another peace settlement, another ceasefire settlement the other day. Do you know why they rejected it? Because it called for them to disarm. Well, if you're not going to disarm your terrorist organization, Israel's going to keep doing what it does. Do you know why the Seattle Times and everybody else was saying, Trump won't let Israel bomb Iran? The Seattle Times hates Israel. The Seattle Times hates Jews. Do you know why they put that one out there? Because they figure people like me will see that headline and freak out and absolutely lose it. That's why they put a headline like that out there, where at the end of the day, all these people said Donald Trump was going to be a warmonger. Hang on, Seattle Times, I'm a little confused. You're mad that he's trying the diplomatic route before wiping Iran off the face of the earth? Look, I'm sure if Iran doesn't come to the table, he will say to Israel, all right, Go do what you do. Drop the biggest bomb, the mother of all bombs. I'm going to give you the best bombs. I love bombs. They make the best explosions. That is what's going to happen if they don't make a deal. I'm okay to give this a chance for a little bit. But those articles are designed to shake people like me. They're not going to do that. You know what I'd like to see the numbers on? Bernie Sanders. I would like to see the numbers on how many people supported Bernie Sanders that now supported Donald Trump. I would like to see if those people would ever vote for Bernie Sanders again, because this whole idea of sending out Bernie Sanders and AOC to talk about the oligarchy is insane, especially when you're sending out very wealthy people who have never had a job outside of government, except AOC was a bartender and Bernie Sanders worked on a commune that was actually a Russian plant. So aside from those jobs, they somehow have lots and lots of money. AOC drives a nicer car than I do. Bernie Sanders spent $221,000 on private jets flying around the country to fight the oligarchy. Yeah, Bernie Sanders has 2 houses. I only got 1. In fact, I think he's got 3 or 4 houses now at this point. And you notice from Bernie Sanders, he's changed his rhetoric. It's no longer the billionaires and the millionaires. Now it's just the millionaires. Oh, no, it's just the billionaires because I'm a millionaire. I get confused sometimes. It's crazy. It's hypocritical. If the leftists didn't have double standards, they wouldn't have any standards at all. We go to the Warrior Injury Law Studio line. Take a call from Leonard in Shoreline. Leonard, what's up, man?
Oh, nothing much. Just sitting here wearing a what do you call it? A necklace got the church cross on. I just got it yesterday, and I'm wearing it proudly.
Getting ready for Easter, I see, my friend. Yes, I understand. Yes,
I am.
Mm-hmm.
As a matter of fact, I just wanted to tell you, that clip you played of Sean Hannity arguing with that unhinged Democrat woman who supports murder. I have a funny feeling that the next time somebody confronts her like that, somebody's going to have to explain to her that when the rapture of the church comes, she'll stay down here and burn while the rest of us see Jesus Christ.
I don't know much about Christian theology, but it's a good thing my friend Lars Larson is actually joining us on the show, hopefully tomorrow, so he can actually talk about the differences between Easter and Passover. I know some of you have said you missed John reading the sacrament, so this is about as close as I'm going to get to that, but we are going to do that for those of you who have some curiosity about comparative religions. Appreciate the call, Leonard. Appreciate you being part of the show. You want to be part of the show, you give us a call or a text at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. When we come back, a local hospital followed the pattern that's happening across the country of banning DEI. Man, feels like the tide is turning. The winning never stops. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. Good news finally in the Woke Report. The world-renowned Fred Hutchinson Cancer Center in Seattle has announced that it is shutting down its diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives in response to an executive order from President Donald Trump. The order makes the termination of DEI-related programs a requirement for continued federal funding, a financial lifeline that supports the majority of Fred Hutch's research efforts. They said in a statement to Cairo 7, due to the federal administration's decision to make the termination of DEI programs a condition of federal funding, Fred Hutch has made the difficult decision to change its DEI programs. Change or shut down? Does that mean you're going to do that other thing where it's DEIA? Yeah, they added an A, by the way. Do you know what that means? It's for accessibility, handicapped people. This is the new thing, by the way. Chris Rakedahl did the exact same thing. He said, do you know how many handicapped people we've helped with DEI? I'm not saying you shouldn't help the handicapped people, but I think that a kid who's in a wheelchair also doesn't need to be lectured on how he's a racist because he's white. I'm just putting that one out there for a second. You want more ramps? You want more handicap-accessible bathrooms? You want more schools that teach the deaf and the blind and all? Absolutely. I don't think anybody disagrees with that. So what they're trying to do is slide in that A to change the meaning. Hopefully Donald Trump won't come down on them like a ton of bricks. Well, for now, the center's DEI website has been taken down, and previous DEI progress reports and program information are no longer publicly available. The move is part of a broader compliance effort, as federal funds account for more than $400 million, over 70% of Fred Hutchinson's research budget. Without these funds now or in the future, we can't fulfill our mission. This compels us now to act and protect our ability to continue our life-saving and life-enhancing research. I have a question, though. How much of that money was being spent on DEI, and how does that help anybody? Is the cancer racist? Is that what it is? The cancer's racist, right? Right? That's what it is. It decides, well, I was going to attack this person, but they're white. No. We're just going to give the black person cancer. Are you kidding me? What kind of nonsense is that? President Trump's executive order, as you all well know, mandates the dismantling of DEI, and they added DEIA, and environmental justice programs across federal agencies. It also requires a review of federal employment practices, contracts, and performance measures tied to DEI goals. Now, the policy shift at Fred Hutch is interesting to me because, don't forget, we had a guest on our show not too long ago who is a former employee of the Fred Hutch, who filed a lawsuit against them alleging discrimination and retaliation for raising concerns about the center's DEI culture. You remember Tammy Weitzman, a veteran oncology social worker who is suing Seattle Cancer Care Alliance, now part of the Fred Hutch Cancer Center, for wrongful termination. Weitzman claims she was harassed by colleagues, targeted for being Jewish, and ultimately fired after objecting to political messaging within DEI training sessions and workplace communications. Let's not forget the words she was called we can't repeat on the radio, and this was by people who worked there. Weitzman said she also faced backlash for treating the daughter of a former Trump administration official. During a DEI meeting, she recounted a personal experience of anti-Semitism from her youth, only to be dismissed by a facilitator who told her, "You're white, you can pass." So the question is, are these things going to go away permanently? You know how you can really tell? Were the DEI people laid off, or were they just assigned to a different division? And then you check that division, and you see if DEI has migrated over there to see if the changes have actually come. Meanwhile, we head on over the Warrior Injury Law text line. We got this text from John on one of our earlier stories. Ari, who paid for Senator Chris Van Hollen, the Democrat from Maryland, to fly to El Salvador? Did he pay for it out of his own pocket or out of the pocket of taxpayers? Well, the assumption right now is taxpayers, but we won't actually know until his next filing. Because in the filings where you have to declare the money you spent, the money you took in, and campaign donations and such, that's where you actually see that kind of stuff, and it might take a cycle or two until we see the credit card bills. Good question. When we come back, my friends, your chance to be part of the golden age of America as we give away $2,050 and a Daniel's Broiler gift card. Plus, we're also going to talk about how the Seattle Times is hiding criminals that were TDA, Tren De Aragua. Give you all details when we come back. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. Welcome to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI, your home for the politically homeless, streaming live at KVI.com and on the KVI app. If you want to be part of the most dangerous show on the airwaves, call or text the Warrior Injury Law Studio line at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. Coming up this hour, Seattle Times, in one of their writings, completely left out the fact that the people they were talking about were violent gang members. But before we get to any of that, my friends, it is time for your chance to be part of the golden age of America.
And I'm asking you to dream big again, and this will be America's new golden age. We're going to have a golden age.
Yes, we are. A golden age of America, and it'll be wonderful.
The golden age of America begins right now.
That's right. It begins right now. And here's how you get to
the
be part
golden
of
age of America, I call it. It's begun. So it's the golden age of America, and that's what it's going to be.
Yes, President Trump, I agree. That's why we're about to do the contest right now. So here's what you have to do. When I give you the keyword, you text the keyword and only the keyword, not your phone number, not your address, not Ari, you're the best radio host in all the land, nothing else, just the keyword. If you win, like Liam Neeson, we have a very particular set of skills, and we will find you. So just the keyword to the phone number. That's it. Only the keyword. So if you want to be part of your chance to win $2,025 and a $50 Daniel's Broiler gift card, all you have to do is text the keyword DATA, D-A-T-A, as in I follow the data. I follow the science. As in that robot guy's name on Star Trek The Next Generation, his name was Data. So text the keyword DATA, D-A-T-A, to 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. Remember to only enter it once. Duplicate entries will be removed. You have until 5 o'clock to enter the keyword DATA. That's D-A-T-A to 206-421-5757. Your next chance at winning.
And I'm asking every citizen all across our land to join me in launching a new golden age for America.
Yes, we're also asking you to text the keyword DATA to 206-421-5757. Your next chance at winning comes tomorrow at 8 a.m. during the morning ride with Phil Vandervoort. Check out danielsbroiler.com to reserve a table, place your takeout delivery order, and more. And President Trump, I'd like to thank you for helping us out today with so many quotes, more than usual. Thank you so much.
Well, and thank you, Ari. You do an incredible job and such an important voice. Thank you very much, Ari.
That's very kind of you to say, President Trump. I really do appreciate it. And my friends, you are going to need that money. Why? Because we got some breaking news for you right now.
Talk Radio 570 KVI. Breaking news on the Ari Hoffman Show.
Our governor, Governor Bob Ferguson. We're not going to have enough money for ink. We're going to have to shorten his name. It'll be like the Depression all over again. Thank you, Mike. Our governor, Bob Ferguson, has announced that he is going to reject the latest Democrat budget proposal because it has too many taxes. Now, before you get excited about this, he said something in the statement that should scare all of us. Here's the statement in full. Governor Bob Ferguson comment. Proposed $12 billion in taxes. Trump administration cuts and chaos continue to cast a shadow over the state budget. What does Trump have to do with anything? If you continue violating federal law, he is going to continue threatening funding. If you continue to do that, you know how you stop doing that? Stop breaking federal law, and you won't have the problem anymore. Oh, also, stop your out-of-control spending. You guys were in this hole long before Trump ever became president. Stop blaming him. Oh, of course, he brings back the keyword chaos. He says, I'd like to thank the legislatures for their hard work as we balance the budget with a $16 billion shortfall. Whoa. Mike, you catch that? Remember what I said when they first said it was going to be $6 to $8 billion? I said, no way. Wait a minute. Then they said 10. Then they said 12. Now, the number we've been using the entire legislative cycle has been $15 billion. When did it get to 16? This is new information. That means this is all the spending they want to do. Remember is that the budget shortfall is actually $7 billion, but for all the future spending they want to do, all the new things they want to add in, that gets you to 15, or what we thought was 15, and now we're hearing is 16. While our budget situation is currently challenging and may soon become dire with additional cuts and chaos from the Trump administration, we must defend Washington in the face of that. Federal funds make up 28% of our state budget. So then stop breaking federal law. Stop violating federal law. Says that includes billions of dollars from Medicaid. So did you guys check for fraud in the Medicaid system? Are you giving it to illegal immigrants? K through 12 education. Well, don't allow Hamasniks in your schools and you won't have a problem. Child welfare, early learning, disaster recovery and response, unemployment insurance. Unemployment insurance? You guys lost $1 billion of that all on your own during COVID. To Nigerian scammers, what'd you do? Open an email from a Nigerian prince saying that you had inherited a whole bunch of money? Every day, federal funding is canceled, frozen, or denied by the Trump administration and Elon Musk. Yeah. So it's just funny because I got a survey the other day to my phone. Yeah, they actually sent this to me, the media guy, and it was clearly sent out by the Democrats asking how I thought Bob Ferguson was doing. So this public opinion survey that was texted to me, generally speaking, would you say things in Washington are going in the right direction, or have they gone pretty seriously on the wrong track? Do you approve or disapprove of the job Bob Ferguson is doing? Do you approve of the job the Washington legislature is doing? How do you feel about taxing big business? Which of the following comes closer to what you think, even if neither one describes your exact position? You would rather pay higher taxes or you would rather pay lower taxes? Overall, do you think major businesses in Washington pay too much in state taxes, too little in state taxes? Overall, do you think wealthy individuals in Washington pay too little, too much in state taxes? A measure to repeal a new payroll tax on employers is on the ballot. Would you want that? You see what this is all about? Oh, and then my favorite is it jumps. It goes through every single tax. So I got to assume the results of this poll were devastating. Because here's what it starts asking after that. How do you feel about the Department of Government Efficiency, otherwise known as DOGE? How do you feel about Donald Trump? How do you feel about Elon Musk? Do you see what this whole thing is about? So basically what it said was, we don't want higher taxes. This is going to be my guess, and I haven't even seen the survey results yet. We don't want higher taxes, but we don't like Donald Trump. That's what Washingtonians probably said. So what is he doing? He's blaming everything on Trump and Musk. That's what he's doing. So meanwhile, he's saying he's also trying to win the argument. He's trying to win the argument on taxes by saying that we're going to have significant cuts because of Trump. He's trying to reframe the argument. So he says we must ensure Washington is in the best possible financial position to weather more cuts and damaging economic policies from a Trump administration that weaponizes funding to punish those it disagrees with and forces them into compromising their values. Isn't that exactly what Chris Rakedal is doing to the La Center School District right now, where he said that because you guys won't hide pronouns from the parents, we're going to take away your funding? Isn't that exactly what Chris Rakedal did during COVID when people said, we don't need these stupid masks anymore, and then he threatened to take away their funding? Isn't that exactly what they've been doing for years now? And then my favorite part is here. Ready? And this is why this is especially bad news. We need a balanced approach using a reasonable amount of progressive revenue and adopting solutions to reduce our spending. Okay. So what Bob Ferguson is basically saying is, I came up with $4 billion in cuts. You Democrats won't even take those. I gave you an out. Here's the $4 billion in cuts, and you could say we're going to tax the rest, but you won't even do that. You refuse to make any cuts whatsoever. So as excited as you want to be about what Bob Ferguson just did, he's still the same old turd Ferguson we know. He wants more progressive revenue, a.k.a. taxes. Now, there is some good news around here today, my friends, because remember the story that Jonathan Cho had for us just a couple days ago about the two employees of Washington State University that beat up a kid who was wearing a MAGA hat on campus? And why do I not call it alleged? Because there's video surveillance footage, and they admitted to it to the police who arrested them in body camera footage that Jonathan Cho got a hold of. And I want to say, if Jonathan Cho had not done the heavy lifting on this article, none of this would have been revealed to the public. So we have now found out that Washington State University has fired Patrick Mahoney, the guy who wears the hammer and sickle pin, and Gerald Hoff. Both men have been charged for assaulting a WSU student who was wearing a Trump hat. The statement says, WSU is aware of an off-campus incident that occurred last February involving a WSU staff member and a graduate student. After an investigation conducted by the City of Pullman's police department and in accordance with WSU's policies, the staff member's employment has been terminated. The second individual was a graduate student serving as a teaching assistant. He was not a Washington State University professor. You know, I hate that dodge, by the way. I hate saying that. He's still a member of your faculty. You guys are letting him teach kids. So stop saying, oh, he's not a professor. Okay, we get it. You know, when he does the grades, I don't think the kids see the difference. This person has been relieved of all teaching responsibilities. In compliance with federal privacy laws, no other further details regarding the matter will be disclosed. WSU remains committed to fostering a safe and supportive learning environment for all students. We take every complaint and concern seriously and will continue to address such matters with the utmost priority. Pardon my ignorance. Mike, they're the Cougars, right? The Washington State University, they're the Cougs? Okay. So no more Huskies because UW still hasn't done the right thing. From now on, I will be cheering for the Cougars at every opportunity because they did do the right thing. Wait, that may be too much. You know why that's too much? I'm going to tell you why. One, I don't know anything about college football.
Clearly.
Right. But two, here's the other thing, because I know they don't necessarily play each other. But two, here's the other thing. They still hired the guy with the hammer and sickle. They hired the guy with the hammer and sickle. So I don't care. I'm sorry. This is why I don't do college ball at all. Yes, I know there's the Apple Cup and all those things. Yes, I am aware of this stuff, Mike. From time to time, I know a thing or two about the foosball.
Thanks for coming.
Yes, pat, tussle the hair, whatever little hair Hoffman has left on top of his head. Tussle. Mike's in no mood for my Michigas today. I can tell that right now.
No, you just sound like a dope, and
right.
You keep sounding worse
and worse as I try and dig myself out of this hole.
What else do you got?
What else do we got? Move out of that. So I got this one for you here. We found out today that ICE has confirmed the suspects accused of kidnapping, torturing a Seattle area woman are illegal immigrants with alleged ties to Tren De Aragua. Yeah, oh, gee, that's a shocker. So we knew this because this is a story of the woman who they tortured her by drilling her hand, shot her, and left her for dead. So ICE has confirmed that the two suspects accused of kidnapping, torturing, and attempting to kill a Washington State woman in January are illegal immigrants from Venezuela with alleged ties to the Tren De Aragua gang, which has been designated a terror group. Kevin Sanabria Ojeda, 24, and Alexander Arnaiz Gutierrez, 35, have been booked into the King County Jail on charges of robbery, kidnapping, and attempted murder. The defendants have been accused of kidnapping a woman, 58, outside her apartment complex in Burien, Washington, on January 21st. The female victim was allegedly robbed and tortured before being driven to a mountain pass 90 miles away where she was shot and left to die in the snow, but miraculously, she survived. An ICE spokesperson told me early this morning that the agency has lodged immigration detainers with the King County Jail in Seattle on the two defendants, who ICE has said have suspected ties to Tren De Aragua. Both of them have prior criminal histories. Here's something else, by the way. Is King County going to honor those detainers? I reached out to King County this morning, still haven't heard back from them. U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement lodged immigration detainers on the two aliens with alleged ties to the notorious Tren De Aragua gang, according to ICE. King County, Washington is holding both individuals on charges of robbery, kidnapping, and attempted murder. And then they say that Kevin Sanabria Ojeda is a citizen of Venezuela, previously arrested and released by the Seattle Police Department for domestic violent assault on May 14, 2024. Arrested and released? I reached out to the Seattle Police Department, and they were not very forthcoming with the details about that because they said they hide details during a domestic violence investigation. I'm going to keep digging on that one. Alexander Arnaiz Gutierrez is a citizen of Venezuela, previously convicted by Clark County District Court of DUI, receiving a sentence of 364 days in jail. When Arnaiz failed to appear at immigration court, an immigration judge ordered him removed on June 5th, 2023. Now, court records show that Sanabria Ojeda and Arnaiz Gutierrez obtained Washington State driver's licenses while illegally residing in the state. Hang on. Does that mean they're registered to vote? So, embarrassing story for everybody. I woke up this morning and the alarm let out a warning, and I thought I'll never make it on time because I didn't realize that my driver's license was expired. My birthday just passed. It renews on my birthday. I didn't check. Luckily, I was able to renew it online, but do you know what it asked me when I was renewing it online? Would you like to register to vote? How come it doesn't know I'm already registered to vote? Why is it giving me that option? Does that give it that option to everybody? We know the answer is yes. But we know more than that. Thanks to Katie Daviscourt over at the Post Millennial, that authorities discovered a Social Security card belonging to Sanabria Ojeda during a search of his vehicle and another Social Security card belonging to an individual identified as Charlie Manzo, according to court documents. So he's not a U.S. citizen. He's a gang member, and he has a Social Security card? Can you explain that one to me? There's also a third suspect in the case that authorities are actively searching for. According to the court documents, law enforcement has not disclosed the identity of the third suspect. So they're being held in jail on $1 million bail, and they're scheduled to be back in court later this month. But what's crazy to me is the Seattle Times. So after everything I just told you about these guys, here's how the Seattle Times said it. Here's how the Seattle Times told this story. Headline, 3 men left Burien woman for dead on the side of I-90, prosecutors say. 3 men, not 3 gang members. Hey, that's sexier. That's a sexier headline. That's the one that sells newspapers. Well, I forgot. The Seattle Times doesn't know how to sell newspapers anymore. So they tell the same story, but nowhere in this article, hang on. I'm going to do this fun little thing. You know when you hit Control F? Let's do this. Undocumented. Oh, no, see, you heard the little beep? You heard the little beep on the computer? The word is not there. If I did the illegal, the same thing would happen, because nowhere in this do they mention they were gang members. Nowhere in this do they mention they were illegal immigrants. Nowhere in this do they mention who they actually were. Not at all. Instead, they're just covering it like they're ordinary residents of the area. They don't want to tell the truth. Is this biased or is it bad reporting? Let me know what you think. 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. Is the Seattle Times being biased or is it bad reporting? Now, meanwhile, we know how they feel because we know how all the Democrats feel here in Washington. As we mentioned yesterday, Washington Attorney General Nick Brown has failed to comply with a congressional request to produce specific documents pertaining to the state's sanctuary laws for illegal immigrants. This includes the number of times jails and local authorities refuse to comply with ICE detainers and other controversial immigration-related matters. He defended the state sanctuary statute and claimed his office does not retain most of the requested information. Sure, why would you retain it? It's not like it would be helpful to law enforcement or ICE or anybody else for that matter. Yeah, nobody should be surprised by this in any way, shape, or form. We got a whole lot more to discuss as the show continues, my friends. When we come back, your calls and your texts. I want to know what you think about the Seattle Times. Biased or just bad reporting. Plus, we are going to talk about the former basketball coach who's getting 40 years in prison and what he did. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. This was a big story locally today. A former Sumner High School boys basketball coach was sentenced Thursday to 40 years in prison, 3 months after he was found guilty of 19 sex crime counts against his teenage basketball players. Predators go where there's prey, guys. Personally, I say we should do the Idaho method. Have they reinstituted the death penalty for sex offenders yet? Prosecutors say Jacob Jackson groomed and manipulated 18 boys between 2018 and 2022. In front of his convicted abuser, a former Sumner High School student, at Jackson's April 17 sentencing, according to Como News, urged a Pierce County judge to keep Jackson locked up for years. He says, standing here today is not an easy task, but I will not let shame and fear silence me. I stand here today to demand accountability, to shed light on the truth, and ensure that no one else has to endure what I have. Good on that kid for being that brave to come forward and do something like that. I'm not going to read the exact charges online because they're horrible, but sounds like this guy deserves more time than they actually gave him, even though he got over 40 years in jail. We go to the Warrior Injury Law studio line, take a call from Ted in Gig Harbor. Ted, what's up, man?
Well, that guy sounds like the Democrats' next poster boy.
Yeah, I mean, are they going to say, oh, no, he shouldn't have gotten all that time in jail? No, it's wrong. Don't deport him, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, you know, and one segment ago, you know, those 3 gang members, they have every right to be in this country because, I mean, come on, that Garcia guy, right? They said, oh, he's got he's a Maryland man. He's got every right to be. Must be the 99th Amendment to the Constitution, right?
Yes, the one we haven't heard of yet. I wonder. Very good. See, Mike gave you the rim shot for that one. I wonder.
I got a rim shot.
Yeah, I wonder if we're going to find out that King County will not honor the ICE detainer. I wonder if we're going to find that out, but what I'd want to know, and so far it seems like no, the answer to this is no, but I'm kind of curious if there were ever any kinds of detainers in the past or if they knew who they had, because don't forget the Seattle Police Department released this guy once already.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely crazy stuff. Ted, appreciate the call. Appreciate you being part of the show. You want to be part of the show, you give us a call or a text at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. It seems like there's a consensus over on the text line. This one's pretty funny. And the consensus is when I asked if the Seattle Times is biased or just does bad reporting, it seems like almost everybody says the Seattle Times, it's both bad and biased. Yes, I do like that. That's very good. Meanwhile, speaking of bad and biased, Harvard is in more trouble. Secretary of Department of Homeland Security Kristi Noem terminated another $2.7 million in grants and ordered Harvard to prove compliance with foreign student requirements. In fact, they want to know who the students are at Harvard. Doesn't it fascinate you that Harvard would rather lose all this money than stop terror supporters on campus? Isn't it fascinating to you that Harvard would rather lose, now by my math, $2.47 billion in federal funding rather than address anti-Semitism, discrimination, and hatred on campus? They're backing the Hamasniks. This isn't some brave fight against Donald Trump. This is just bonkers crazy. They are doubling down on the insanity. That's what they're doing. They're just making it worse and worse and worse. I wonder if University of Washington is going to pull the same shtick. Do you think all these schools are going to band together and just say, yeah, we're all going to fight Trump. We're going to make this a Trump thing. He's trying to defund higher education. Well, now we've got more fun out of Harvard. A billionaire Palestinian American who's been accused by the families of the victims of the October 7th massacre of aiding and abetting Hamas, has stepped down from his position on the Dean's Council at Harvard University's Kennedy School of Government. Let me just make sure we got this right. You're telling me that a guy who has been accused of aiding and abetting Hamas was on Harvard's Dean's Council of the university's Kennedy School of Government? Does this surprise anybody? According to the New York Post, Bashar Masri resigned from his position at the Ivy League university days after 200 family members of victims of the terrorist attack in Israel sued him in federal court for allegedly aiding the construction of terror tunnels and rocket launchers in Gaza. A spokesperson for the Kennedy School of Government told the outlet, Mr. Masri has resigned from the Dean's Council. The lawsuit raises serious allegations that should be vetted and addressed through the legal process. So Harvard probably said, you want a raise? We'll give you a raise. Do you want tenure? We'll give you tenure. What would you like because you support Hamas? We'd love to support you. This guy allegedly took money from U.S. aid and funneled it to Hamas for their terrorist infrastructure. That's what this guy allegedly did. Does it surprise anybody he was hiding out at Harvard? No, of course not, because that's what Harvard is these days. I mean, it really doesn't surprise anybody. They are literally choosing to continue persecution on campus rather than deal with the rampant hate. They would rather lose $2.47 billion in federal funding. Yeah, doesn't surprise me. That's what happens when you are dedicated to your values. Are these the values that we're always hearing the Democrats talk about? These seem to be the values. When we come back, Travis Couture from the Washington State Legislature will be joining us to tell us about some good news regarding McNeil Island and some good news regarding what's going on with the budget process. You're listening to The Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. Welcome back to the Ari Hoffman Show. You want to be part of the show, give us a call or text at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. Don't forget, you have until 5 o'clock to enter the word to be part of the Golden Age of America contest. Speaking of the Golden Age of America, a reporter asked Donald Trump today when he was sitting in the Oval Office with the Italian Prime Minister. He said this reporter was asking about the reports that Donald Trump waved off Israel from attacking Iran. Here's that exchange for you so you can hear it from the horse's mouth.
And they said the attack is what?
That you waved off an Israeli plan to attack Iranian nuclear facilities.
I wouldn't say waved off. I'm not in a rush to do it because I think that Iran has a chance to have a great country and to live happily without death. And I'd like to see that. That's my first option. If there's a second option, I think it would be very bad for Iran. And I think Iran is wanting to talk. I hope they're wanting to talk. It's going to be very good for them if they do. And I'd like to see Iran thrive in the future, do fantastically well. I know the Iranian people, they're incredible people. Always have been very smart, very energetic, very successful people. And I don't want to do anything that's going to hurt anybody. I really don't. But Iran can't have a nuclear weapon. It's, pretty simple. It's really simple. We're not looking to take their industry. We're not looking to take their land. All we're saying is you can't have a nuclear weapon.
It's pretty simple. Now, it's fine to talk to somebody before you blow them off the face of the earth. That's perfectly fine. I have no problem with this. The reason the media is trying to make a big deal about this is because they are trying to sow discontent, but they don't realize they're shooting themselves in the foot. Why? Because the media are the same ones who say, Trump's a warmonger. He's going to drag us into World War III. Okay. We've had one Trump administration. We've had one Biden administration. We've had almost 100 days of another Trump administration. How many wars did we get into in Trump administration 1? The answer is 0. It was the first time in modern history a president didn't get us into some war. 0 new wars. We took out ISIS. Afghanistan was under control. Under Joe Biden, how many wars did we get into? Well, he withdrew us from Afghanistan, abandon the country, let millions of people go into slavery under the Taliban, and let them be enslaved by leaving behind billions of dollars of U.S. war equipment so that the Taliban could use it against their own people. Putin saw this, and Putin said, well, Ukraine's looking mighty tasty. I'm going to go take over Ukraine. And then Joe Biden got us into paying for a never-ending war in defending Ukraine. Then Joe Biden was playing footsie with Iran, and he was funding Iran to try and get them not to develop a nuclear weapon because that worked so well when he was vice president under Barack Obama, who did the exact same thing. And Iran said, thank you for the money, and moved along. That was what happened. Iran funded Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthi rebels, among others. And that caused October 7th, which has caused a 7-front war against Israel, which has caused attacks on global shipping in the Red Sea. So who's the warmonger, guys? Really, who's the warmonger here, Republicans or Democrats? Let's be real about this for a second. Let's be real about what happened. We can call a spade in this case, and we can say Donald Trump has been committed to doing diplomacy first, trying to do that, trying to keep us out of wars. This is the left. This is the media, not even the left. This is the media trying to create some kind of controversy for people like me to go, wait. I want you to blow up Iran. I'm fine with you talking to Iran before you blow them off the face of the earth. What would a deal with Iran look like that I would be okay with? Here's an example. Let's do this. We'll take off the sanctions if you get a new government in place to oppose the Ayatollahs and stop funding terror and stop your ambitions towards a nuclear state and allow U.S., not UN inspectors, to come in and see that you are actually ending your nuclear programs. In fact, we'll help you end them. That's, I think, a very fair deal. Then you get your economy back, you get to sell your oil to whoever you want, and people get to be free and prosperous. If it involves the U.S. paying anything, who am I kidding? That's what Democrats do. Pay whoever it is not to do the bad thing. Now, other things that are going on in international matters. Marco Rubio, Secretary of State, closed a part of the State Department that was planned by the Biden administration and crew on countering foreign disinformation. Yeah, that's not what it was doing. This was a thing that was created sometime after 9/11, where they said, you know what, we actually got to make sure that they're not messing around now that social media is a thing. We got to combat that. We got to make sure they're not doing it. And as you can see, they did a terrible job. I mean, we've had issues with other countries messing around on social media. Look what's happening with TikTok right now, for example. We know that the Chinese are messing with the algorithms to show our kids the stuff they want to sow problems here in the U.S. So what happened was people who were Democrats who were in control of the State Department said, wait a minute, we can use this to go after conservatives. They were targeting conservative talk radio hosts like Ben Shapiro. They were targeting anybody who they disagreed with using the State Department, using your taxpayer dollars. So Rubio announced the shuttering of the State Department's Counter-Foreign Information Manipulation and Interference Office, formerly known as the Global Engagement Center, which, by the way, why is the State Department in charge of that at all? Don't you think that should be something under the CIA, under the NSA, under Department of Homeland Security, under anybody else, not the State Department? That would have made a lot more sense. The Trump administration, meanwhile, is mulling a proposal that would slash the State Department budget by $27 billion and shutter smaller embassies and consulates around the world. The proposal calls for the elimination of funding of more than 20 international organizations, including, wait for it, this is my favorite news of the day, the United Nations. We've been calling for that for so long. What would you like to see the building in New York turned into? I'm thinking a parking lot, or would it be better as a homeless shelter? Or maybe we send all the illegal immigrants there until they get deported. I think any of those are really, really good options. Text us what you want to see the UN building turned into. 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. They want to cut funding to NATO, not all of it. They want to cut some of it. And I got to say, I don't disagree with them. It's about time Europe stepped up on some of this. So, according to Fox News Digital, the U.S. contributed around $13 billion to the United Nations in 2023 and around $3.5 billion to NATO. Hang on, $13 billion to the United Nations? Would you mind telling me what that went to? Their mission statement says we stop wars. We stop wars. Can you think of any wars that started in 2023? Hang on, I'm scratching my brain. It was sometime in the fall, wasn't it? I think it was in October. Yeah, big war started. Lots of hostages. Never tried to do anything to get them back. Oh, wait, I know what we should do. We should tell the hostages to dress up like MS-13 gang members, and then the Democrats will want to bring them back, right? Right? That'll fix everything. Got that one from the Babylon Bee. The proposed budget cuts call for allocating $2 billion for America First priorities. Those coffers would be used for specific partners like India and Jordan, according to the document, or broader priorities like the South Pacific Tuna Treaty. However, a State Department spokesperson said there's no final plan or final budget. These are just early drafts. It has to pass layers of approval within the administration before it even gets to Congress. Congress can then take it as an outline and decide to draw up its own budget figures. The Foreign Service travel budget and benefits would be scaled back, and the Fulbright Scholarship Program would be eliminated. The document calls for a 2% reduction in diplomatic security, cuts to the Inspector General's office, and closure of smaller embassies in countries such as Malta, Luxembourg, and the Central African Republic. Now, cuts to diplomatic security, I assume that means when you close these embassies, you're cutting the security for the embassies that are now closed. I don't think we're talking about a situation like we've had with embassies before. You might remember under Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton, they made movies out of what happened when you don't give diplomatic outposts and embassies security. So I think that we're not talking about what caused Benghazi or allowed Benghazi to happen. I think what we're talking about is you're taking away the security for these embassies and outposts that you're closing already. This all makes a lot of good sense. Question is the nitty-gritty details. And the other question is, can Congress actually get this done? This is some fascinating stuff to see because we know how much money we waste abroad thanks to Elon Musk and Doge. Speaking of wasting money, when we come back, it looks like the feds are going to be investigating Homeless Inc. in California. Does that mean they're going to get to Seattle next? We'll have all details for you when we come back. You're listening to The Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. You might remember we covered this extensively at the time, that the state of California blew $24 billion on the homeless situation, and the problem only got worse, and they had no idea where the money went. That's their own internal audit. And don't forget, they get federal funding for things like that. Well, now, apparently the FBI and the IRS are investigating where all that money went. Fox News has a story for us.
Republican, MAGA-aligned United States Attorney here in Los Angeles, Bill Asaley, he just launched a federal probe investigating exactly where California's homeless dollars are going. The FBI and IRS are going to assist. Asaley estimates $24 billion in homeless funding statewide over the past 5 years, much of that spent here in Southern California.
We will get to the bottom of it, and if we find that any federal laws are violated, we will arrest and prosecute those individuals involved.
Governor Gavin Newsom and the chair of the L.A. County Supervisors tell Fox they welcome Asaley's investigation. However, L.A. Mayor Karen Bass, who says homeless numbers dropped by 10% last year, she says she doesn't want the investigation to be, quote, a fishing expedition.
Okay, so now we see where the waste likely is. Gavin Newsom is no fool. We may pretend he's a surfer dude fool, but he is no fool, and he wants to be president one day. Can you imagine what it would be like if he said, no, I don't want a federal investigation into where $24 billion went? Because the first question you have is, okay, where'd it go? Why didn't you want the investigation? If the numbers only got worse, why couldn't you tell us why you didn't want an investigation? So Karen Bass, she wants to keep her job. She just got elected recently. She wants to keep her job. She wants to stay in office. So what she wants is to keep her sugar daddies happy. And who are the people living off the government dime? Probably the people who are the reason things have gotten worse and that $24 billion, or at least a large chunk of it, disappeared. Hey, can somebody get the FBI and the IRS to investigate Homeless Inc. here in Washington of how things have only gotten worse after the billions and billions and billions of dollars have been thrown this way? That would be too much to ask for. At least California was smart enough to do their own internal audit. Have you heard of anybody calling for an audit around here? No, of course not. Now, I saw a story locally that immediately I want to do the usual, oh, Seattle's a hellscape, and that's why everybody's leaving. But the company involved gave me pause. So this, according to a report from commercial real estate company CB Richard Ellis, the Walt Disney Company has decided to downsize its office space in Seattle last quarter. The entertainment conglomerate renewed its lease located within the 4th and Madison Tower earlier this year, but not without reducing the space needed from 170,000 square feet to 121,600 square feet, which is approximately a reduction of 28%. Now, according to the Puget Sound Business Journal, the Seattle office is dedicated to the technology sector for the Disney Corporation. Disney has been in the space since 1998. So they're not leaving. They're not running away like so many other companies did here. They're just reducing their size. Now, before you go saying, oh, of course, because Seattle's a wasteland, Disney is also leaving the Fox studios in Hollywood. Walt Disney Company, according to the Los Angeles Times, acknowledged they will be vacating the Fox studio lot where it has been the primary occupant since Disney bought most of Rupert Murdoch's 21st Century Fox Entertainment assets in 2019. The $71.3 billion deal did not include the studio real estate. However, it featured a provision that Disney would move in as a tenant for at least 7 years. That's expensive studio space. And how much studio space do you even need these days? You probably just need data banks and servers for computers because everything is done via CGI these days anyway. Plus, things haven't been so good over at the Mouse House. Ever since they went woke, they've been having a lot of trouble, and they're not having the same amount of revenue they did before. So I don't think this is a running from the Seattle hellscape story. I think this is Disney downsizing story. Meanwhile, going to the Warrior Injury Law text line, I asked you guys what you thought we should do with the UN. Reggie says, turn the UN building into a Democrat re-education center or a free hotel with free food for every American to visit New York in lieu of the airfare, housing, and money that illegal aliens got. Mike Kerb says, the UN building, let the Dalai Lama have an apartment there. There are already apartments in the UN Plaza. Truman Capote had a penthouse there for a year. Yeah, exactly. Robin Lakewood says, make the Trump UN condos. That's a good one. Steve Rohde says a Trump casino. That's a good one. I like that one, too. Lane says, Ari, I think they should turn the UN building into a prison. Paul also agrees that should be the Trump Hotel and Casino. And this one here from the 206 says, hey, let's just make it a Top Golf. That would be a lot of fun. I agree with all these. These are all good suggestions. Lots more to discuss as the show continues, my friends. When we come back, assumptions, when you make them, you know what that makes you and me, my friends. We're going to tell you about the Democrats' bad assumptions when we come back. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. Welcome to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI, your home for the politically homeless, streaming live at KVI.com and on the KVI app. If you want to be part of the most dangerous show on the airwaves, call or text the Warrior Injury Law Studio line at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. Coming up at 5:45, your chance to win fantabulous prizes, including a $50 Daniel's Broiler gift card, plus so much more. But before we get to any of that, we are finding out more information about the shooting at Florida State University, and the more information we find out, we can already see what the Democrats' angle is going to be on this. Today, in the Oval Office, while Donald Trump was meeting with the Prime Minister of Italy to negotiate trade deals and stuff, of course he's going to get questions when there's a day where there's a shooting, when there's a tragedy like this and 2 people are killed and 6 other people are injured. Of course you're going to get questions about that. But somebody asked if he was considering more gun control laws. Can we go over the facts of this for a minute here? This student, this college kid who got access to his mother's firearms, she was a police officer. She was a sheriff's deputy. This kid somehow got access to the guns and went on a shooting spree. I am sure that the sheriff will never forgive herself. But what gun control laws would have helped this? I'm going to assume for a second that the sheriff has had guns around her house her entire career, and that they are well known to her kids. My guns are known to my kids. My guns are still locked up. I assume the sheriff's guns are still locked up. But you know what? Kids get into things. What law would have prevented this? Some kind of new safe? Yeah, kids know your passwords. They just do. The entire family knows my passwords because we all share a Netflix account. So, is that really going to stop anything? No. What laws would have prevented this? What gun control laws? President Trump responded accordingly. He said, it's not the gun that kills people. It's the person that kills people. And he is 1,000% right. Now, we don't know the motives of this shooter. We're not going to name the shooter. We don't do that here on the show. But what we do know is that somebody's going to politicize this for their own reasons. They're going to politicize it for gun control. They're going to politicize it saying it was the child of a cop. They're going to politicize it saying, oh, no, wait, they really hated Trump, whatever the case may be. At the end of the day, our college kids are vulnerable. Our college kids are exposed. We have these giant, wide-open campuses where anybody can come and go. We had Hamas supporters take over our campuses. We had people that are literally in with Hamas take over our college campuses. How many more times do we need to see this happen before we say, this gun-free zone thing just ain't working out so well? And this was in Florida, where I assume there are people with guns in Florida, given how red that state has become. It just doesn't make sense to not even have security on campus. Let's take the University of Washington. I can walk into any building at the University of Washington at any time, and nobody will ever know I'm there. University of Washington is a wide open campus. I can go anywhere I want. That's how those Hamas supporters were able to take over the entire quad, and nobody stopped them. How many police officers do they have in the UW Police Department? 8? 12? Maybe? Something like that? Yeah, that's not going to stop anything. My son's college in Israel. You need an ID to get on campus. You need to get past the security guard. And they've got like subway turnstiles at the gate there. You can't get in without scanning your ID. And to get guests in, oh, don't even get me started. And they have museums on that campus. They have things to see on that campus. They have one of the coolest radio museums I've ever seen. Fascinating. What's in that kid's studio? Really cool stuff. But you need ID to get on that campus. Our American college campuses are wide open. Our American public school campuses are wide open. I tell this story all the time. Anytime we discuss this, which is far too often, is that when I was running volunteer clubs at public schools in Seattle, we had 14 of them running, having Jewish clubs running at these schools where we talked about Jewish culture and what's going on with Israel and stuff. I could walk into any of those high school campuses without checking in with anybody, especially the old Bellevue High School, which was just laid out with buildings all over the place. There was no way to control that thing. We have wide open campuses, and if we value our children, we will protect our children. Now, you may say, Ari, what do you do with a campus that's in the middle of a major metropolitan area? You know what? Then at the minimum, you need your ID to get into the buildings. At the minimum, you can do that. like my college in New York, where you needed IDs to get into every single building on campus. At the very minimum, have those. Because I'm tired of these stories. I'm just tired of these stories. And everybody's going to swing it whichever way they want. But the solution is right there in front of us. People do not hit a hard target. When they try to hit a hard target, they get stopped. How come the stories we always have of the White House? Somebody attempted to ram the barrier at the White House. Somebody crashed into the barricade at the White House. Somebody attempted to climb the fence at the White House. Those are the stories you hear about the White House, which is a hardened facility. Why don't we treat our kids the way we treat our politicians? Why don't we treat our kids the way we treat our money? Why don't we treat our kids the way we treat our movie stars? Why don't we treat our kids the way we treat our sports stars? No, for some reason it's okay to go through metal detectors when you go to a Seahawks game, but not okay to go through metal detectors when you go to a Seattle school. For some reason, people think that's a racist or it's acknowledging crime. Crime is a real thing even in safe cities. There's no shame in saying, we want to keep our kids safe. Here's a metal detector. Every synagogue I know has armed security. Many synagogues I know have people who wand you as you go in and out with those metal detector things. That's us being realistic about the situation. Is it funny to see them do that to grandmas? Sure. But that's us being realistic about the situation. And yet nobody's having that discussion today. The discussion I'm seeing is the right desperately trying to prove that this child of a cop was some kind of Trump hater or some type of anti-Israel person or something, and the left saying guns, 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 cop bad. And when did this shooting happen? 11 a.m. Florida time? So this is something that happened this morning, and already the political spin is on it. 2 people are dead. 2 people are dead. 6 people are injured. Yeah, the why is important, but the how is also important. This was not a hardened target. This could have been avoided, perhaps. And that's the conversation nobody's ever going to have. Because what's going to happen is what always happens. This fades into the background. This fades into obscurity until the next time it comes along. Mike, we've been doing this together for almost 4 years now. Almost 4 years now. In fact, our anniversary is coming up literally next week. Next week. Our anniversary, 4 years. I'll get you something nice. Our 4-year anniversary is coming up next week. So, how many school shootings have we done in that time? And I say college and high school. And every time I say the same thing. But you know why I say the same thing? Because maybe one of these days somebody will get smart and listen. This is the conversation nobody is having. I hope Ron DeSantis has this conversation. It's Florida State University. I hope somebody's talking about securing the campus, that when you have kids in a place, you want to keep them safe. You want to keep the professor safe. You want to keep everybody safe. You want to do that. Can't we have a conversation in some place like Florida that has common sense government? Can't we do that there? Common sense is just out the window, completely out the window. According to Fox News, chaos unfolded during a press conference in Dallas on Thursday afternoon as the spokesman for Carmelo Anthony's family took jabs at Austin Metcalf's father, who was escorted from the site of the event before it began. Let's back up and let me tell you exactly what happens. So there's a sporting event in Dallas. And what happens is Carmelo Anthony, who's black, goes to sit in the shady spot, a tent, some kind of tent structure, which was meant for Austin Metcalf's team. Austin Metcalf comes in, sees Carmelo Anthony sitting there, says, "You don't belong here." And Carmelo Anthony is like, "Make me leave." And Austin, this teenager, says, "Okay, well, you better leave or we're going to make you leave." And Carmelo Anthony pulls out a knife and stabs him to death. So the black kid stabbed the white kid to death. So as opposed to saying, hey, why did the black kid have a knife on him? Instead, this has now become, he was the victim, he was the victim, he was the victim because he's black, which is beyond insane. Now, I don't say alleged, even though legally I'm supposed to, not legally, even though according to policy you're supposed to say alleged. But Carmelo Anthony confessed to doing it to the arresting officers. He said he did it to the arresting officers. So he's going to try and make some kind of self-defense argument. But at the end of the day, a 17-year-old kid is dead because he asked somebody to get out of his team's spot, which was shady. That's it. So a man who just lost his son wants to go to the press conference of what the other side are saying, and they have him removed? You know, it's one thing to say, hey, can we put a security guard on this guy in case he decides to cause a scene? It's one thing to say, hey, can we put a security guard on this guy because he may try something? We don't know. It's one thing to do that. I would understand that. But to have him removed and then try and play the victim? This is what Carmelo Anthony's representatives said after this news broke that they had the dad of the murdered kid removed.
And all I'm going to say, so it don't be asked later, is that was disrespectful and just shows you all the character who is not invited. He knows that it's inappropriate to be near this family.
Disrespectful? Your son, your client, killed his son. Who's being disrespectful here? That's what you're going with? That's your defense of this? Inappropriate to be near the family? You think that dad doesn't want to hear everything about what's going on because his son was murdered by this kid? Of course. God only knows what's going through that dad's head. This is insane. Apparently, he was asked to leave and did so without incident. Anthony is facing first-degree murder charges for allegedly stabbing Metcalf to death during a dispute during a track meet. Now, he was released from the Collin County Jail after his bond was reduced from $1 million to $250,000. Oh, and by the way, he's holed up in his family home in a gated community. So they're going to try and make this kid seem like a poor black kid. He lives in a rich gated community. There's a GoFundMe for him. There is this website that's giving them money. And where's the money going? Because apparently the family allegedly bought a new sports car, which is sitting in the driveway right now. Apparently they don't necessarily even need the money. The news conference was addressing the over $450,000 of GiveSendGo funds that have been donated to the Anthony family after his arrest, and rumors that the money was being spent inappropriately. So that's what you had the press conference for. The father of the victim rightfully wanted to know what was going on, and then you guys said this.
But he did it. And so I say to people, actions speak louder than words.
Your client killed his son. Sorry, allegedly killed his son. And you're saying actions? Yes, actions do speak louder than words. This man showed up to watch. This guy showed up to watch and was asked to leave, did so.
Okay? What he has failed into is the political operatives that want to make this thing a political thing of hate, yet bigotry, and yet racism.
Oh, stop. That's exactly what your entire defense is going to be. That's exactly what it is going to be. In fact, do you know what the mom of Carmelo Anthony, the accused murderer, said? Here's what she said. She said, according to the Post Millennial, that her family has been under attack, and her husband's mental health is deteriorating, and that her daughter is afraid to sleep in her own bed because of alleged threats made against their family. I'm not defending threats being made against your family at all, but I do have a question, lady. Why'd your son have a knife on him? And how come you didn't know he had a knife on him? You want an example of the kind of parenting I do? My kids have their backpacks in the entry hall every single day. And occasionally I just paw through them to see what's in them because I want to make sure they're not going to attract ants with whatever food they left at the bottom of them. But that's what parents do. You didn't know your kid's carrying around a knife? Do you know how many times my kids have asked me to buy them knives? Do you know what the answer is? Well, maybe. That's the answer. What kind of knife do you want? What do you want it for? What do you want to use it for? My older son says, can I have a gun? Can I have a gun? Can I have a gun? Because he wants to be like me and work security at the synagogue and do all that kind of stuff. And the answer is, no, you cannot have a gun because you live in a different country and they have different laws over there. But at the same time, they all come to the range with me on a regular basis. So, you guys are now trying to play the victim in this whole case? The Anthony family, who reportedly lives in a gated community in which their home is valued at close to $1 million, appeared at this press conference trying to play the victims and trying to blame the victims? I'm sorry, this is backwards. And the fact that he's becoming like a media darling is beyond crazy. Just beyond crazy that is the direction we're going in. But the media loves this stuff. They love this stuff. They love to paint you as the victim. You're just misunderstood. Oh, was it his upbringing in the $1 million home in the gated community that caused him to stab somebody else, or did he just lose his temper? Perhaps we should have a discussion about that. Did the kid have other discipline issues? Was he a first-time offender? Is this something we should be talking about, having a bigger discussion about the parenting, where they didn't know the kid had a knife? Think of all these questions. The media is not interested in that. They're interested in picking whatever narrative they want. Like a Maryland man. The Maryland man who was wrongly deported. The more and more we find out about this guy, the more and more egg the left has on their face. I mean, at this point, it's ridiculous how much egg they have on their face. So, you would think to yourself, well, do Americans support deporting all these illegal immigrants? Because the left is trying to make it that, oh, they don't support this. They don't support. He's just a Maryland man, just a Maryland father. Yeah, you mean the guy whose wife filed domestic violence charges and restraining orders against him because he hit her with his shoes and gave her black eyes and drew blood from her? Or was it, as we found out yesterday from the Tennessee Sun, the guy who's just a Maryland father, but, you know, the MS-13 gang member that he actually was engaged in human trafficking but released by the Biden administration? Or this Maryland man, this Maryland father, who was arrested while meeting with high-level gang members of MS-13. This is the guy they're trying to make into a hero? Well, do you think you're moving the needle at all? You know what? Let's go to one of the lefty outlets. Let's see if CNN thinks we're moving the needle on this illegal immigration discussion.
Deport all undocumented immigrants. Voters favoring the government trying to deport all 11 million of them. Back in 2016, just 38% of voters wanted the government to try to deport all 11 million undocumented immigrants. Compared to where we are in 2025, 56%, the majority. The American people have come a long way on this issue, much closer to Donald Trump, and I think that's a big part of the reason why Americans are increasingly saying the country is on the right track when it comes to immigration policy, and why Donald Trump's net approval rating on that issue is in the positive.
Yes, exactly right. Because this is what we voted for. Despite attempts to say this isn't what we voted for, this is exactly what we voted for. And by the way, Fox News today did a whole piece talking about all the illegal immigrant criminals in Maryland while their state senator, not their state senator, their actual senator, while their senator went down to advocate for a gang member. A gang member. This is what's going on in his state that you've never heard him mention once.
So while the center focuses on issues overseas, what about his own state? In 2022, Maryland had about 300,000 illegal immigrants, and that's 5% of the state's population. Maryland is just one of 6 states, as you can see, that gained unauthorized immigrants between 2019 and 2022. Those folks were there illegally. And according to the White House, these are just some of who have been arrested or convicted of crime. As you can see, it's a long list of people.
Well, that's the Trump administration. We can't trust them. Yeah, what does the Maryland sheriff have to say about this guy, this Maryland man, this Maryland father?
Did that case, right? You've looked at the evidence. Are you convinced, as the White House says, he's an MS-13 member?
Oh, 1,000%. Yes, indeed. 1,000%.
1,000. No doubt.
Not only that, he's no doubt, and he's a domestic violence abuser. I mean, in our community, we would screen him working with ICE, and hopefully they would decide to take removal proceedings for just that reason. And he's been through removal proceedings before, and they asked for him to be removed, and yet he was still here. So kudos on the Trump administration for removing a criminal. Horrible on Senator Van Hollen for wanting to bring him back.
Okay. As we were discussing yesterday, this is the poster child you want for your movement? This is the guy, just like George Floyd, this is the poster child you want for your movement, the MS-13 gang member? This is what happens when you make assumptions, guys. The media wanted to believe the narrative that he was just a Maryland father who was deported. And we haven't seen any evidence that he was anything but a gang member. I got a question. What was his profession? Has anybody said what his job was? What is your profession? Just like we're in the movie 300, right? What was his job? I heard that he hung out outside the Home Depot. Didn't say he was a construction worker. What was his actual job? Oh, maybe he didn't have one because he was an MS-13 gang member. Lots more to discuss as the show continues, my friends. When we come back, the Washington State Supreme Court makes a ruling that one city can't clean up its homeless population. Didn't the Supreme Court rule on that already? We'll discuss when we come back. But first, Todd Herman's Daily Thoughtcast, right now on The Ari Hoffman Show. Earlier today, Governor Bob Ferguson said he is not going to accept the Democrats' $12 billion tax plan to solve their massive out-of-control spending. However, before you get excited and think to yourself, wow, maybe we misjudged Bob Ferguson, he says it's going to take a combination of fiscal responsibility and progressive revenues. Translation: more taxes. Joining us now to discuss on the KVI studio line, Representative Travis Couture from Washington's 35th District. Thanks for being with us today, buddy.
Hey, thanks for having me on again, Ari.
Such a pleasure. We always love having you. So I hear there's a whole bunch of budget insanity. This must have sent the Democrats into a tizzy because didn't they get rid of his wealth tax and now they tried all these other taxes instead and he's still saying no to it?
Yeah, the governor's playing a funny little game of find another rock because he hasn't actually stated what number of taxes that he's willing to accept. So every time they come up with something new, it's just not enough. And I agree that $12 billion in new taxes is unacceptable and unsustainable. But so is $8 billion, so is $5 billion, so is $3 billion. The only acceptable number is zero. Zero new taxes, $0 in new taxes. That's the acceptable number that the governor should be shooting for. But he's already signaling that he's going to cave to some of these new taxes, including regressive taxes on our poor and working class, blue-collar Washingtonians, like a property tax and so many other different things. It's totally unacceptable. Washington State has a spending problem, not a revenue problem, and that's the premise that we should all start with.
Right. Let's go through the numbers for a second here. So Senator Gilden has done a great job of working with the nonpartisan office to figure out what the actual budget deficit gap is, and it's around $7 billion. That's from out-of-control spending. The governor already came up with $4 billion in cuts. People, the volunteers of Doge Washington, have found over $2 billion in cuts. We're almost there. There could be no new taxes needed, but the Democrats want the $15 billion. They want to say it's 15. Oh, now 16, by the way. I don't know if you caught this, but in the governor's statement, he's now saying 16 instead of 15 because that's the new spending they want to do, right?
Exactly. Anything above $7 billion in deficit is them accounting for all of their reckless new spending. And we got to ask ourselves, Ari, who is actually going to win in this budget as a result of that new spending? It's politicians and their pay increases. It's lifelong bureaucrats in the swamp and their pay increases. And it's criminals. That's who's winning in this budget right now. Because I'll tell you, I just came off the House floor today, and they robbed single moms, poor single moms on the edge of poverty from their child support payments. They robbed the age blind and disabled folks in our society of nearly $60 million. And they took and cut in half postpartum care for moms who are going through postpartum disorder after they have just given birth to their babies. They said, watch out for the villain, know who the villain is. We need to raise progressive revenues. But I don't know about you, Ari, but a property tax is not progressive revenue. That's an assault on the working and low income people of Washington State. And they're actually robbing the poor people of Washington State to make sure that lifelong bureaucrats and the rest of the swamp gets pay increases and that we take care of criminals in our state. It's absolutely wrong. We didn't cut anything like laser hair removal for transgender inmates. We didn't cut anything like crazy HEAL grants about studying DEI in Africa. We are actually sending more money to other states, to other entities, to provide services to people in other states. There's tons of Medicaid fraud. I mean, there is so much waste, fraud, and abuse in our budget. Washington Doge has found a lot of those things, like Rain City Jacks. I don't think we need to get into that. But at the end of the day, there is so much waste, and what they're doing is they're cutting from the people who we actually should be taking care of, so that we can give pay increases to politicians and try to do a little bit more for people who've committed violent murders and rapes and crimes in our prison system. I mean, it's just nuts. And so they did a lot of these bills on the floor. They passed party line, all Democrats voting for them mostly, and it's just terrible. And you could just tell as you look across, you're just like, how could you even stomach voting for this? It doesn't even make any sense. And one of the worst things about this, Ari, is with that $12 billion tax increase that they're looking to crush all of our jobs and send them to states like Idaho and Arizona, one of the things that they've done is that they end the budget with this massive end fund balance. And so if you look at between the rainy day and the end fund balance of the budget, it's over $6 billion. They're cutting from the poor and the needy and then padding the wallet of the state of Washington with $6 billion. That's an unprecedented amount of money in reserves. and they say they need it to combat the bad orange man in the White House, Donald Trump. And that's just absolutely nuts. That money wouldn't even come till Trump's at the end of his 4-year term. And so, I mean, it's absolutely nuts. But as the governor also pointed out in his press release today, he attacked the federal government for cutting services and cutting Medicaid and K-12. Well, newsflash, I just came off the floor, and Democrats cut Medicaid, they cut K-12, and they cut all sorts of essential services. And you know what they increased some of their spending on? Illegal immigrant health care for adults who violated the rules and the laws of our country and came here illegally. I mean, some of this DEI stuff in colleges so that some people at the UW can go around and harass and beat Jewish students so they can't even traverse the halls between their classes. I mean, it's nuts. We have this absolute administrative bloat in our system where we have reducing caseloads, but we keep hiring more people to provide less services. It just doesn't make any rational sense. They're totally off the rails. We don't need any new taxes. And you know what? If we pass the Senate Republican budget, the Chris Gildon budget today, everyone in the state of Washington, unless you're an elitist who takes a lot of free taxpayer rent-seeking money from the government, pretty much the rest of us would wake up the next day and not even notice a difference, except for the fact that we don't get taxed more, and that would be fantastic. So we can do it without raising taxes for sure.
In the last few minutes we have with Representative Travis Couture from Washington's 35th District, I'm going to read you a DM a friend of mine sent me. I'm not going to say his name, but he listens to the show, and he's going to know I'm talking about him. He sent me a DM this morning, and it said, "Your state's politics are nuts." And he attached to it a share of what happened over the weekend where you had the Democrats shutting down debate from the Republicans when the Democrats were gutting the Parental Bill of Rights. And he called their move not just regarding shutting down the debate, but gutting the Parental Bill of Rights. He called it an absolute disgrace. People can see this from outside the state, and they are contacting me, and they live in other blue states, and they go, our states aren't even this crazy. This guy's from New York. And he sent that over to me, which shows how crazy this is and the national news it's making and how bad it is. Now, for the budget debate, I think it would be fun if you guys stood up and mentioned some of the things that Doge Washington has found and said, amendment, no more funding the self-service stations at Rain City, whatever it was called, that place. Maybe we're not gonna fund those anymore. And what would happen was they would just shut down the debate on it, wouldn't they?
Well, I'll tell you this, Ari. We have been doing that, and twice now I have been silenced on budget bills and budget debates because they don't like what I have to say. But I think it's totally on brand what you were talking about. On a bill that would end parental rights, on an amendment to that bill that would restore the rights of voters in our state to have a referendum on the ballot, they ended our First Amendment rights and therefore the 3 million plus constituents that our side of the aisle represents across the state of Washington by silencing our voices. And, I mean, you just can't end enough rights in one swing of a gavel, Ari. I mean, it's just kind of nuts. I mean, it's very authoritarian. They don't like the points that we're making. They don't like the arguments that we're making. They know they're wrong. The people of the state of Washington are absolutely with us. And the only tool they have left in their toolbox is to muzzle us and silence us. But you know what? We fought back, and they stopped silencing us because we pulled out every trick in the book. We threw the entire rule book at them, and we ground that floor into a dust. And we killed almost 30 different bills yesterday at cutoff, including a bad gun bill we killed and a bill that would have ended our juvenile detention system as we know it. We killed that bill as well. There's a lot of bad stuff that we killed just yesterday alone. It would take a whole nother show to cover what we killed. But when we ground that place into a dust for silencing us, they were begging on their knees to have it stop. And so we're fighting back with everything that we got. We're in the minority. We might be outnumbered, but we're never outclassed.
And this is why we love having you and all your other Republican colleagues on the show, because you guys tell us what's going on. And our Democrat friends, very, very few of them actually agree to come on the show to discuss any of this, because then they have to answer my hard questions about the insanity they're trying to level on all of us here in Washington. Representative Travis Couture, thank you for your hard work, and thank you so much for taking the time out to join us today. We really do appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for having me on again, Ari.
Always a pleasure, my friend. We love having you on the show. When we come back, so much more to talk about. You thought the legislature was bad. The Washington State Supreme Court is now trying to undo the U.S. Supreme Court and saying, you can't ban public camping. No, no, no. You can't do that. We'll tell you what's going on when we come back. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. Welcome back to the Ari Hoffman Show. Just a reminder, coming up at 5:45 is your chance to win fantabulous prizes, including a $50 gift card, plus so much more. Yet another reason always keep your radio tuned to 570 KVI. Left on your dial, always right on the issues. You can also stream us at KVI.com, download the KVI app, and, of course, subscribe to us on whatever your preferred podcast platform is. Well, the Washington State Supreme Court ruled today that Spokane voters cannot use the ballot box to rewrite the city's rules on homeless encampments. According to My Northwest, the court said Initiative 2023-4, a proposal to expand the city's ability to criminalize camping in public places, wasn't a case of people making laws, but rather the people trying to play city manager. And that, the court said, was an overstep. You know, here's what I don't get. These guys never want us saying what we want to do. They threw out the $30 car tabs because it was a citizen initiative. They threw out other initiatives before. I've had it with the Washington State Supreme Court. I just have. You're never going to get a fair ruling out of them, ever. It's unfortunate because they're the backstop. If anything manages to make it past the Washington State Legislature and manages to make it past the governor or manages to make it an initiative, the Washington State Supreme Court is just going to kill it. You got to find a way to make these things federal and violations of the Constitution, so that way at least you have a chance of it bypassing them and going to the Supreme Court. Oh, wait a minute. This already did. They're sore because of the Grants Pass ruling. So now they're enacting their little revenge. So now they're going to have to find another way to do it. Back in 2022, Spokane resident Brian Hansen proposed an initiative that would have gone way beyond the city's current policies, cracking down on encampments, even though shelter beds were available. That's a major shift considering that Spokane is already part of a state-local partnership formed under the Homeless Housing Assistance Act that allows camping only when shelters are full. You know the problem with this is, though, is that the left loves to play these little games where they say there's no shelter beds available. There are plenty of shelter beds available. They're in religious nonprofits, though. They're in a lot of places like Union Gospel Mission. Those things are available, but the left doesn't want to consider those because they don't make any money off them, because they don't own them, and because they're religious. So we can't have that. That's the ridiculousness. There are plenty of shelter beds available in a lot of places. If we want to house everybody who's homeless in King County right now, it could be done. They just refuse to actually do so. In fact, here's an example. Because they refuse to actually do so, this is very entertaining to me. UW Medical is laying off staff at their new behavioral health hospital because nobody's being sent there. What does the King County Regional Homeless Authority do? They just export people to other parts of King County. They don't actually send them for services at all. So now they're going to be laying off staff in this new behavioral health hospital where they have the space to take in the mentally ill on our streets. We could be solving this. When are we getting the Trump administration out here to investigate our homeless inc. like they're doing right now in California? Only good news to wrap up the show. Your good news giveaway, your good news headlines, your chance to win a $50 Daniel's Broiler gift card, plus so much more. You're listening to The Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. It is time to feel good as we wrap up another amazing episode of the Ari Hoffman Show right here on Talk Radio 570 KVI. And before we get to your good news giveaway, got some good news headlines for you. This one comes from our very own Seattle Kraken. Actually, I think this story is a good news story and a bad news story. So don't they normally drop prices when the team's not doing well to try and get people to come back to the stadium? Now, they announced that they're dropping. I know this because I'm a Mets fan. Believe me, I know this. And I always thought the Kraken was astronomical. But apparently now they are reducing prices at the Kraken. So what this woman, Samantha Holloway, has told Como News, who works for the team, she says they've done tremendously well in this season, in this city. We've built this organization from the ground up. We have a great fan base, and we've become a hockey town. Now, that's great. And she says her and the leadership team have heard feedback from fans, particularly regarding tickets and concessions in the now 4-year-old arena. Yeah, by the way, it's a flippin' fortune. So now what this means is any upper or lower bowl seat not in a designated club or ice level section will get a price reduction. Season ticket holders will also get a chance to sign up year-to-year agreements as opposed to the 3, 5, and 7-year commitments that the Kraken offered not long after their launch. Launch, not lunch. Shows how hungry I am right now. Season ticket holders will also get a 25% discount on food and drinks, as well as a calendar of activities for exclusive events. Holloway said most of the feedback has come from families who are focused on cost affordability. The Kraken will market a $150 package for 4 tickets, sodas, and popcorn. That's not a terrible deal, by the way. All of it, Holloway said, comes from internal conversations that have been ongoing for a year in recognition of a sports marketplace that changed in the years after COVID. The franchise, wait a second, this franchise was set up during COVID, post-COVID. I remember they did their big announcement out at Gasworks Park in the middle of COVID. So, no weddings, no funerals, but the city of Seattle, no synagogue, no school, but the city of Seattle allowed them to do an announcement about a hockey team. Yes, all that. Now, I'm great that they're reducing these prices. This is wonderful, but I wonder if it's because not as many people are actually going to the games. I'm going to check their crowd capacities for the last few games. Some good news out of Israel and Gaza, by the way. So, after a year and a half, there is this dog named Billy who was kidnapped on October 7th from a woman named Rachel. Rachel had her friends and her family killed, and her dog was kidnapped. Well, they managed to find Billy, the dog, in Rafah, where the IDF is operating right now, and they brought him home to his owner, Rachel, who's still alive. Now, the video of this is beyond adorable, by the way, because that dog is just kind of there and kind of trying to figure out where he's going next, and then he sees his owner, and his little tail starts going bonkers crazy, waggling back and forth. It is one of the most adorable things I have ever seen. If you like animals, even if you don't like animals, I shared it over on my social media, Ari Hoffman Official on Facebook and Instagram, The Ha Father over on Twitter. Check it out. It's beautiful. It's wonderful. It's really, really nice. Sweet thing from a war zone. It's really nice to see that kind of stuff. Before I forget, your chance to win fantabulous prizes. Today, we are giving away a $50 Daniel's Broiler gift card. Daniel's Broiler has been a Seattle favorite since 1980, features USDA prime steak and other specialties, including chicken and fresh seafood, as well as a selection of high-end spirits, wine, and cocktails. Daniel's Broiler is open now in Bellevue, downtown Seattle, Leschi, and South Lake Union, with dine-in, takeout, and delivery. Check out danielsbroiler.com to reserve a table, place your takeout, delivery order, and more. We're also giving away a copy of 7 Steps to a Successful Retirement by Brian Evans of Madrona Financial and CPAs, plus a bonus of the Little Red Book of Retirement. Learn how to design your retirement to support your quality of life. For 30-plus years from Brian Evans of Madrona Financial and CPAs, a local company working to help you grow deep financial roots so that future financial storms don't blow your life savings away. Visit MadronaFinancial.com for more information and discover how you can create a rooted wealth plan today. Last but certainly not least, we're giving away 4 tickets to the Bremerton Air Show at the Bremerton Airport on July 13th, which I am so excited to be going for my very first time. Join KVI at the Bremerton Air Show on Sunday, July 13th. Running both on the 12th and the 13th, but KVI will be there on the 13th. The Bremerton Air Show is back for another year of modern military aircraft, classic planes, and world-class performers. This year's theme is Mustang Mania, which means there's going to have a whole bunch of P-51 Mustangs at the event, which I think is going to be really, really fun to watch. Get tickets and learn more at bremertonairshow.com. That's bremertonairshow.com. All you have to do in order to win these fantabulous prizes is be caller number 10 at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. Caller number 10 will win a $50 Daniels Broiler gift card, a copy of 7 Steps to a Successful Retirement by Brian Evans of Madrona Financial and CPAs, a bonus of the Little Red Book of Retirement, and 4 tickets to the Bremerton Air Show on July 13th. Phone lines are open now. Give Mike a call for your chance to win at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. We got a little time left, so we got time for one more good news story. This one comes from carscoops.com. They say that crime doesn't pay, but earned the Florida Highway Patrol a mean-looking junior supercar that's about to be deployed to keep the roads safe and drivers below the speed limit. They showed off their new C8 Stingray. It is amazing. The Corvette Stingray is now a cop car in Florida for the Florida Highway Patrol. Everything's better in Florida. Just look at that. They get a Corvette Stingray as their cop car. Man, that's awesome. I remember when they got a new Camaro as the cop car in New Rochelle, where I grew up. That thing was pretty awesome, too. Well, that's going to do it for us today, but we'll be back tomorrow with more insane stories, more exciting guests, and, of course, more giveaways. You've been listening to The Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI.